Well, we had plenty of land to work on, really, but we didn't have equipment to work on with. You had a horse and a plow and a wagon and a sled, and boys that drove the horse and took care of the wagon and the sled and all. They could make a sled, and they'd make the runners and all, and Daddy could tell every time if we stood on that runner and rode, we didn't know how, but if you was on one side of it made it heavier on one side. And when he'd come to the house, he'd say, "Did I not warn you all about riding on that sled? It's pulling that horse too hard." Well, everybody'd look at each other like nobody had rode on it, and you'd say, "Well, you did, so don't deny it." Well, we would. We'd jump on that runner and ride so far, standing on the runner, you know.
What was the sled for?
Well, that's what you hold in your corn and
just like a wagon,
everything.
utility kind of.
Only it had a runners on it instead of
skis instead of wheels.
We had a wagon.
Because you can make skis, but you can't really make wheels. You have to buy those.
Yeah. But we always had sleds, and that's what you hold your horse feeding thing and the cow feed and so on. When you go to the grocery store, you had to park the car as far as from here up there. Why, you hauled it on the sled.
Mm-hmm. So you guys built a sled.
Yeah,
that you pulled on the grass and dirt and ground.
You pulled it anywhere
behind
you needed to go.
Behind the mule.
And
that was your truck.
Even in the winter when one had to go to the doctor or whatever, you put them on the sled and took them.
Yeah, and that was your truck.
Took them out to where the car was.
That's neat.
Because in the winter, you don't know where toad and so on lives. I can tell you, we used to call it steep bank, and that road would get terrible in the winter, and had to leave the car up there. Well, that was a long ways, but Daddy just put you in the sled and go.
When did you guys get your first car?
Ever since I can remember, Daddy had a car.
Oh, okay.
Like an A model and a T model, and.
So your whole life you've had a car?
All that I can remember, yeah.
And Model A, Model T, something or other?
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
And we'd ride in the rumble seat.
But you didn't.
That was the way back.
The back of the car.
Yeah.
But you didn't use the car for anything other than going to town, or
more or less going to work. We did go to town.
You didn't. You didn't use it for work around the house.
Oh no.
Chores.
No. In the summer he could bring it, pretty close, but in the winter sometimes you couldn't. You didn't have antifreeze.
What do you mean you couldn't get it? Couldn't get it to the house?
No, the road would get bad in the winter.
Oh.
It was dirt road.
So you just parked it up on, as far as you could bring it to the house?
Way up the road.
Really? Because otherwise you'd get stuck down there by the house and couldn't get back out.
And couldn't get out. And in the winter you had to drain the radiator because you didn't have antifreeze. You had water.
It was water.
And I know one time we went, there was 3 of us, I think, 3 or 4 of us went up there it's in the night, so Daddy decided it was going to get cold. We didn't have weather forecast like we do now. Better go drain the radiator. Well, about 4 of us, I think, went just because it was going. It wasn't all that cold right then, but it was when morning come. And that time I seen the rainbow at midnight.
A rainbow?
Oh, it tickled us to death. We'd heard that song, Rainbow at Midnight, but we thought it was just a song.
So the moonlight made a rainbow?
Something made the rainbow, I don't know what.
That's neat.
But that was so pretty, because it was a white night. I mean, you could see where you was at.
Mm-hmm.
And that rainbow come up around there, and it, that was exciting. We all tried to tell it at the same time when we got back to the house.
So exciting. I don't know if I've ever seen a night rainbow.
Well, that's the only one I've ever seen.
Yeah. You think people used to be a lot better at predicting the weather? Just intuition?
They went by the clouds and the wind and
temperatures.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have, you didn't have a radio to listen to.
Because now, like when you cut hay now, because it has to be dry, if you want to let the hay dry out, otherwise it's going to get ruined.
Well, now
you check the radar and it's not going to rain for a few days, and you could get it done.
Well, now they press that some way to get the
moisture
out of it.
Yeah.
Well, see, back then you couldn't.
You had to dry it out in the sun.
And we didn't have a hay baler or a hay roller or nothing like that. And Daddy put in this big tall pole that was called stack poles.
Mm-hmm.
And we would load the sled or the wagon, or which one they had over there. We'd load that up with hay. Then we'd all go out there and you stacked it around and around them poles just as high as you could reach. And that was our stack pole. That's how we kept our hay for the winter.
And you just kept it
And
there?
then you put, I don't know.
Or did you transport it into the barn?
Well, we didn't always transport the hay in the barn because you put it on a stack pole and
That's just left
then
it there.
you put something on top of it. I guess it was a tarp or something at that time. You put on top of it so the rain didn't go down through it at the pole.
Yeah.
It would shed the rain on the outside. You had to stack it a certain way so the rain would shed off it.
Right. Like shingles on a roof kind of thing.
Yeah, you kind of went a certain
That's pretty
way
neat.
with it. And we all didn't have hay forks. Daddy made us hay forks with just go out and cut a limb, a forked limb. You know, he would pick him out one before he cut it. And actually, I'd have rather use Daddy's to use the hay fork anytime. You know how hay will hang on your fork sometimes. Well, that wooden fork, it didn't. But we was too little for but we still had to work in hay. We was too little to use a real fork, and he'd make us them hay forks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you done things different back then.
Yeah.
His daddy'd say, save so much out of each thing, you know, and they'd cure that you used all winter long. Then in the summer, you opened your canned stuff then, so to get it. But
So did you guys know a lot of city slickers that during the Great Depression that were starving in comparison to you didn't really know any?
I didn't know any. Daddy may have because he worked, you know, different places. Everywhere you could find a job at the time, that's where he worked, all the way into West Virginia. But, and he worked in Kentucky most all the time because that's the only job you could find. And he worked in the mines there. He got hurt in the mines there in Lynch, Kentucky.
What happened?
I think it was a rock fell. It knocked his eye out. No, they said it was hanging down on his cheek just like a little
Wow.
thread. You know, they put it back and he could see out of it. But like if he felt bad or got sick or anything, he couldn't see out of it.
Hmm.
And you could see where it broke the bone and all in here. You could see
Dang.
like it separated in here. You
That
know?
might have killed him.
So I wonder if it hadn't really.
Yeah.
I know he was off from work a long time after that, and he walked on a cane.
He got
So-
over it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't remember where else they hurt him at. That'd be his head. But I know he walked on a cane.
Yeah.
But and he was a young man at that time.
When your dad was hurt after that, did neighbors and family come help? Because he couldn't do it, or what?
I don't remember nobody, but Grady Crabtree's family come and helped us hoe some corn in the spring. I mean, you know, when corn first, you planted a lot earlier back then. But he got hurt, I think, in maybe the 1st of October, somewhere there. Doyle was 10 days old, and Doyle was born on the 25th of September. And I believe he was 10 days old because he sent word from Mommy not try to come see him on account of the baby and on account of she just had the baby. And Belden Mullins and Grady Crabtree, they all rode together, and they both come together to tell her. And Belden said, now, Nell, he said, not try to make the trip because Mommy went to get ready. Will you take me? He said, I will, but he said, not come because you wasn't able to make that trip. She said, well, I'm going where you're the one that takes me or not.
Yeah.
You know, she's still going. So he took her, but I believe, and she had to take Doyle with her because I believe he was 10 days old. I mean, he was tiny. And so that would have been about the 1st of October, you know, somewhere there. So, and I know he was all winter, he walked on the cane. Grady kept her. Now, he's not hurt bad, Nell. He just said to come and tell you what had happened and why he wasn't coming home this weekend, but he was in the hospital. But he's not hurt bad. He said, if you not try to make the trip. Yeah, Mommy said he was hurt bad when she got there, but he had said that, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Of course he's gonna say he's not hurt bad. I'll be fine.
Oh, yeah.
My eyeball just popped out of my head.
Yeah.
No big deal.
And then, well, Belden didn't tell Mommy right then what had happened, but when they went back, you know, they'd put it back and all and so on. And then he told her, he said, Nell, his eyeball was hanging down here. And he said, really, I thought you'd lost it. Said it looked like a black thread holding it.
Oof.
And him in the mines, and you know, that had dust and dirt
Yeah.
and everything on, you know.
Not exactly a sanitary environment.
And, you know, and where it like cracked his skull and all around through there, you could see it, like if he felt bad, you could see it better. It was like dark under there, and I'd say they probably had to just
Gosh, I
put
bet
in.
that hurt. I mean,
Yeah,
even
it hurt.
if you just get hit lightly right there in the temple, I mean, that hurts a lot. Can't imagine a big giant rock whacking you there and knocking your eyeball out.
And knocking it out on your cheek.
Oh
Now
my gosh.
Because he went back to work, didn't he?
Sure did.
Oh, yeah.
Most people would get on workers' comp and
Never again.
disability and never
There
work
wasn't
again.
nothing like that.
Yeah.
And then he fell one time. I guess Dennis might have already been 16. Lee wasn't but about 14. But by the time Lee turned 15, he changed on his birth certificate and got a job in the mines. He first got a job at the apple orchard. And they was building the house at that time. And Dennis made the house payments, you know, because they paid for it as they went. Dennis done that, and Lee bought what groceries we had to have. You know, they wasn't making much.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis went to work on the state, like VDOT, but it wasn't called that then. It was just called state highway.
worker of some sort, working on the roads.
And he worked there, and they kept us going, because I see he busted his elbow. I mean, he fell like that, and so he couldn't work there for a long time. And still, there was a chipped bone in there. Even when he died, he still had that. At times, we'd go to do something, he'd say, just like a pin would go through it would catch.
Yeah.
But no, it was a long time. It was Dennis and Lee to support us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we hadn't had canned stuff, you know, you didn't have to buy too many groceries. I mean, you know, stuff like flour, sugar, and salt, things like baking soda and so on. You had to buy, but everything else, you raised it. We even raised our own meal. I mean, they take the corn to the mill and grind it, so we had our own meal. But flour was hard to come by. So.
Yeah.
Why didn't you guys grow flour? Was it just not the right
Well,
wheat? Like, could you not grow
Nobody
wheat?
grows wheat here.
you had to grow wheat, but now Grandma did grow some buckwheat, and she brought us some and planted it. We did raise buckwheat, but not a big field of it, just some in the top of the garden up there. And made the best pancakes, I thought.
Buckwheat pancakes.
I don't remember us ever getting, now we had stamps, you could only get so much sugar and so much lard, so much gas, but I can't remember ever having anything to get the flour with. I mean, Daddy found flour, he said, I guess it's black market, but it's flour. And he bought it in
Black
Kentucky.
market flour.
He figured somebody had got it somewhere else and sold it. He didn't know that. But nobody else had it. Somebody was selling the flour. And it come in cloth sacks. So it wasn't from around there somewhere, because we didn't get flour in cloth sacks.
So was it illegal to sell flour during that time?
I don't know if it was legal or illegal. Daddy just bought it. I remember, and it was called Air Billy. That was the name on the flour sack, a blue and white striped sack. And he bought several sacks of it. And tapioca pudding and something else that he bought in Kentucky. And he brought that whole load of stuff home, you know, and we was thrilled to death, because that was stuff you didn't get. And I had never seen tapioca pudding. And then Mama used them sacks for pillowcases, because they were just cloth sacks. And they was like in It was probably 25 pound, or it might have been more because they was long sacks. And she used them for pillowcases because it was just right for a pillowcase. And they was blue and white striping, said Air Billy Flair on them. I guess it said where they come from or whatever. I don't know, or who made them or what, but I don't remember ever seeing that. But I was up. Well, it's after we moved up there on top of the hillside. It had to have been 12, 13, somewhere there. But I know Mommy was tickled to death he found the flowers. Because it was down to we could have biscuits, gravy, and chicken gravy on Sunday morning when Daddy got home. And the rest of the time we eat cornbread even for breakfast or what have you because you couldn't get flour. And they would take the meal to the mill and they'd grind the meal so we had meal all the time.
What the mill do? Did they grind it and just keep a percentage of the product?
Yeah.
And then sell it?
Yeah, they'd take out so much according to how much you took. If it's a half a bushel or if it's just a peck or whatever, they'd take a certain percentage out, you know. And Dennis Lee always took it to the mill. I know they had to keep a clean blanket. That blanket got washed every time, and you washed it by hand, mind you, to put over the saddle so the flare wouldn't touch the horse's sides or something. That blanket had to go over there as one. They called them sheep blankets. They weren't thick blankets, but you had to wash them by hand because we didn't have a washer at that time. But
they just carried them on over the back of the horse?
Yeah, you put them over so your sacks wouldn't rub against the horse itself, because that would have got in your meal, you know. So there was a blanket always that she kept just for that. When they had to go to the mill, they had to put them blankets.
They didn't use the sled or anything like that?
No, they laid it across the horse. They usually, both of them took a horse.
Didn't seem like you could carry very much that way.
Well, that's about as much as you'd want ground at one time. Because they may go back in a month's time and grind more, you know. But
how far away was the mill?
Well, there was two different mills there.
The grist mill, whatever they call them?
I guess that's what they called them. But there was one that would have had to been, it would have had to been close to 3 miles.
Oh, that's not too far.
And then there was one that was closer than that, but I don't know just how.
Oh, so pretty close.
And that one, they didn't stay open a lot on that one, but they would take it there when it was open.
Was the corn was already dried in your crib? Shucked?
It had to be dry, shucked, leave no bad kernels in there. You had to go through all of that, no silks. And you picked out certain ears when you was putting it in there. You put over in a separate box in the crib because that was for meal. The others, you may feed it to the horse or do whatever, but
the really good stuff you use for meal.
Yeah, that was for meal, and it was kept separated. So.
Okay.
And we could tear the shucks up, take that end out, you know, where it's hard, where you break it off of the cob, and you tear them shucks up, and you make a shuck bed.
A shuck bed.
Put it in a striped bed tick.
Shuck bed.
And actually, it wasn't bad. I remember sleeping on them. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
His Mommy says that way you could change them every year or two, you know.
Fresh shucks.
And get fresh shucks.
Did when you put the corn in the crib, did it go straight from the plant, from the field to the crib?
Yeah.
Just cut off, still in the green shuck?
Yeah, it wasn't green. You let it stay.
Let it dry on the stalk.
Until it started drying, yeah. Then you took it off and took it. If you didn't gather it, probably it's Russian style.
Okay, so you let it turn brown on the stalk.
Yeah, or they turn white more or less. The ear of corn would, but we would go ahead and pull the fodder.
Yeah.
And lots of times even top the corn. you could top it and shock that corn, but you left your ears of corn on there till they got pretty well dry.
And then you put it in the crib.
And it was hard then. You know, it wasn't no more straight like a ear of corn if you was going to eat it. But yeah, and then we put it in the crib. And then Mommy was the overseer of the good ears of corn, the big ears, and she would look in them and see, you know. And then you put that over there in the corn box because it was built just a partition between it and the rest of it, and you put that over there because they had a place there to put potatoes in too. So we had,
In the crib?
yeah.
And the crib was, what was the crib look like? Just
just you'd call it, Daddy called it a board building.
but open, like it had openings so air could move through it, or was it closed
The crib
up?
didn't. The barn did. But
Seems like some that the old ones I've seen were like log. They look like log cabins but they had no chinking gaps in there so it could circulate.
We never had that.
Oh, okay.
That's probably for tobacco.
Oh, maybe.
Where they'd hang tobacco in.
Maybe, yeah.
Because that had to cure.
But the corn crib was just a building, basically.
Just a building.
Okay.
And
it was piled in there.
And I know we had to climb up in it. We did. I don't guess Daddy had to climb that much, but it was up off the ground. And
so it had a wood floor?
Yeah. And it had leather hinges for the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then a big long stick that you put down in there. It was smaller on one end than it was the other, so it wouldn't get
go
knocked
through
out or nothing, you know, so it would go through.
And what was I going to ask? I had one more question. Oh, how'd you keep critters out, mice and stuff?
It didn't have no holes or nothing in there.
Still.
That way they didn't get in.
Huh.
And it was up off of the ground. It had rocks built up under it. It wasn't blocks, it was rocks.
Yeah.
But it was up off the ground. You didn't.
But mice didn't get in there, and
I never remember any ever being in the crib. We had different cribs, but I never remember any of being in the crib.
Did you keep cats around?
But they was usually a cat around. It wasn't allowed in the house, but there was usually a cat around.
Mm.
And we always had a dog. But I never remember no critters getting in the crib because you kept that door closed in the crib. So.
It's Slinky.
Maggie Jr.
It does look like Maggie.